right, excellent. So, hi Richard Buckland.
Hi John.
Hello. So I know that you are a computer scientist and
Yes.
a lecturer and an associate professor.
Yes.
I know you've also been an actuary in the past for I think 10 years you said before, and I think you have an economics degree. Have I missed out anything?
I'm very happy.
You're very happy, that's excellent. So, okay, of all those things, what do you most consider yourself as being? Like, I consider you being a lecturer, my lecturer. Do you consider
Yeah.
yourself as an engineer or?
No, I consider myself as a mathematician and a scientist. Yeah,
Alright.
yeah. But I also think of myself as a teacher.
Right.
Yeah.
So you think that it's very important teaching the younger generations the information that you've acquired?
Oh yeah. I think education is the basis of a civil society, and I think it's really important. And it's not really a matter of me teaching people information. It's a matter of helping everyone that I come in contact with as a teacher to just become the best people they can be in every way. It's not just a matter of knowing stuff. It's a matter of how they think, how they approach life, how they approach problems, and that's to do as much with character and personality and resilience and happiness as it is to do with knowing certain facts. So you've got to know facts.
Yeah, yeah. Alright, that's excellent. So how much time would you say you spend teaching versus how much time you spend academically kind of publishing papers, researching? No idea?
When I'm teaching a course, especially a large course, and especially a first year course, I spend nearly all of my time teaching. I find teaching expands to fill all the available time and more. And you could teach forever, and you still wouldn't have done a fifth as good of a job as you wanted to do. But I think that it's not as simple as you're spending time researching now and you're spending time teaching now. I think if you're an effective professional, then you've managed to arrange your life so that all the things you're interested in are sort of lined up and help each other. So all the time I'm trying to think like a scientist and act like a scientist, and I'm having ideas, and I form theories about teaching and my classes and how they're going, and I'm giving people puzzles to solve that sometimes are real research puzzles. And I think it's very hard to say. I don't think it's right to say, oh, I'm switching off being a scientist and I'm switching on being a teacher, and then I'm switching off being a teacher. And I think the best teachers of science are practicing scientists. And I think the best practicing scientists are people that think a lot about what it is to be a scientist, and that's sort of what you need to do to be an effective teacher.
So when did you start? I imagine if you were my age, I don't think that you'd be thinking of this just yet teaching other people. So when did you kind of transition from being a scientist to being more of a teacher? When did that kind of dawn on you that your philosophy changed?
Yeah. So I wouldn't put it that I've transitioned from being a scientist to a teacher. I'm trying to, the way I view them in my mind, they're sort of very, they're two ideas that are different ways of looking at the same thing. But I think the transition that happened from when I was your age, I just wanted to be wealthy, and I really didn't think about anything very deeply at all. And I wanted to have fun doing maths, and I was a bit disappointed with my uni maths because it wasn't very fun or challenging. It was just hard work. It was just boring and tedious. And it was like someone making me do 100 push-ups when I wasn't very interested in push-ups. So I didn't really enjoy uni maths at all, and I was a bit disillusioned. And as I said, I was just thinking, oh well, then I'll just be a successful person. And it wasn't until after quite a few years of being an actuary and working as an actuary that I started to realize that I was heading down a path that wasn't going to lead me to happiness, because every year the work got a bit easier, because although it was interesting at first, once I knew how to do it, and the problems all had a similar characteristic and nature. I became a specialist, an expert in a particular area, which is very comfortable, and I knew that area inside out. But once I knew that area,
There's no interest.
there wasn't really interest, and I suddenly realised that I could have all the money in the world and it wouldn't make me happy. And I started to think about the times in my life I'd been happy and what it was about life that made it good. And I realised that occasional puzzles I used to do with my grandpa when I was a little boy, he was a mathematician, really exhilarated me. And some of my lecturers at uni had been inspirational and had really challenged the way I thought about things and changed me as a thinker. And I realised that those were the moments I'd felt most alive and happiest. So I went back to university and did a science degree, moved away from economics, and that was just a sheer pleasure. Every unit I did was fantastic, and so yeah. And then when I was doing that, I was a bit angry that I had wasted so many years doing maths at high school and then at university, and no one had sort of ever showed me the love of mathematics. I'd forgotten it, and I was just angry that I'd been taught so badly for so many years, and I was complaining about it a lot. And my wife said, and I think I told you this in the first lecture, my wife said, you're complaining a lot. You know? Why don't you do something about it? And that's when I thought, oh, I like this woman. So I decided to teach a bit at local schools, just trying to show kids at schools what was fun about maths. And any school I could get into, really. And I was doing that while I was doing my PhD, and I started to really enjoy doing that. And then I spent more and more time doing it, and then I thought I should do some teaching at uni. So again, while I was doing my PhD, I just did some tutoring, and then I really loved that, and so I did some lecturing, and it just felt exhilarating to me. I loved it so much. It felt it was almost such an easy thing to do because everyone else was trying to do this horrible thing at uni, and it just took me to show this fun thing. I didn't even have to do it very well because no one else was even trying to do the fun thing, and the students, you know, got a benefit from it, and I felt I was doing good in the world. And then I thought, there's no real comparison between doing good in the world and helping people think about things and making money for yourself. It's just, you know, it's made it very hollow. So it wasn't a hard decision, and it didn't sort of come to me in a flash. It's just eventually I realised I never wanted to go back. I'd taken leave from my work as an actuary, and I told them I wasn't ever going to come back. And
Excellent.
yeah.
Okay, so you mentioned before that when you were going into university, you had this big book of things that you could have.
Oh yeah,
have a look through.
yeah. So I was so excited by uni. I remember that feeling of just, it was this feast. And in those days, education was free. So I didn't have to pay for the courses
At all, yeah.
I could just learn, and it felt like the government wanted me to learn, and the uni wanted me to learn. It was going to be fantastic. And yet, I remember my first year at uni just being this incredible disappointment. That I had expected uni to be this feast of knowledge and learning, so different to the HSC, and it was just like school again, and within different teachers, and my classmates didn't seem really interested in what we were learning, and there was didn't seem a lot of point to what we're learning. Like sometimes we'd just be told stuff, and they'd say, in a couple of years' time, you'll know why you're learning this, or this will be interesting, trust us, and it was just, I didn't feel I was in a community of scholars who are in love with knowledge and electrified. I just felt I was part of some sort of
System.
Yeah, it wasn't as so I do remember this sense of disappointment at first year uni, but nonetheless, I remember first year uni. It had some good bits in it. I learned lots of interesting things. I did lots of interesting courses. I did most of my interesting courses in first year. I was lucky, and I learned some beautiful maths. I learned some beautiful electronics. A lot of economic theory was really interesting at first.
So if you were our age now and going into uni,
Yes.
do you think that you could have ended up in any other field? Was there any kind of point where you had to choose between, say, like actuarial studies and computer science and that, and something else like arts or something very different?
Oh yeah. I don't know. This is before I went to uni. I really liked theatrical lighting, and designing shows, and I had an offer of an apprenticeship from one of the big lighting firms in year 10. I nearly took that. So that would have been quite a different life, but that would have been fantastic too. I think there's always. I never felt I was locked into some sort of path or going somewhere that was determined. There's just so many interesting things yeah, I could have done electronics. I really loved electronics. I love maths. I love teaching. I love computing. You know, there's so many interesting things. If I had my time and went back now, I'd learn a lot of biology and genetics and about the human genome and analysis of that. I do a bit of work in that now, but I wish I'd started 20 years ago. There's so many interesting things.
So many fields.
Yeah. So no, I didn't feel I was locked into a particular thing, and I could have done lots of things, but I do think the science courses I did were always the most interesting of all the courses I did. So I was very pleased whenever I had a science course to do.
Here's one that I'm very interested in. What are the kind of funniest moments, perhaps, in your job, like either in lecturing or academic stuff? Do you have any particular really funny moments?
Things. Oh yeah, all the time. Teaching. In teaching, I'm always interacting with the students, and you're in the forums and things. They're funny people. There's
funny.
Lots of live wires and lots of energy, and my philosophy is always you give the students as much control and autonomy as possible, so they hopefully come out of the woodwork and stop behaving more politely, and everyone shows their true nature. And so you've got 500 fantastic people.
Yeah.
You know, I'm often just giggling away as I read the forums and things people do. It's very funny, and the tutors and I do funny things, and we play tricks on each other, and all the time. What are the funny moments in teaching? Well, I know one funny one, but it's just a silly funny one. But one lecturer who has a thick Russian accent once came to me and looked at me really earnestly and said, Richard, these wireless mics we use. And I said, yes. And he said, you must remember to turn them off if you go to the toilet. And I said, what do you mean? And he said, I was in Rex Val's and I had to go to the toilet in the middle of the lecture. And it's just around the back of Rex Val's, and it was hard, and I was groaning and moaning, and I forgot to turn it off. And when I came back in, the room was deathly quiet.
That's brilliant.
It is very funny. But no, there's lots of funny things that happen all the time, because I think if you're looking for funny things and you're looking for fun, and you've got the right approach to life and work, and you've got to be open to that. But I think the best thing about teaching isn't so much the fun. And the best thing about being a scientist isn't so much the fun, it's just the sense of pleasure in what you're doing. It feels worthwhile and it feels really good to be doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think we skipped over this before too. What are the specifics of your research disciplines? I think that you did cryptography.
Yeah. So I love anything to do with maths, but I've decided that I only want to do research into things that are sort of ethical. I don't want to do unethical research. This is part of my just leaving the financial world. I just don't want to go out and do money for money. Or just show a merchant bank how to shave a millionth of a percent off some trade and make money, or do this 1% faster in high-speed trading, and all that. It just seems parasite on society to do that sort of stuff. And I do love teaching. So at uni there's this sort of dichotomy between teaching and research, and these days, most of the focus is on research, and I think most of the things that are valued are research. So that's research. I can't remember what I was saying. What was the question?
I was talking about research like cryptography. Yeah.
So I like cryptographic protocols, and I really like the way you can use these tiny little building blocks to build these astonishing structures that you would think would be impossible. Like just about everything in cryptography is like a deck of cards. It's just too magic for it to actually work. It's unbelievable when it does. And so by chaining primitives together, you can achieve all these most beautiful effects. One of my research students, I'm very interested in electronic elections. I think democracy is really important. And I'm frightened that we are slowly making democracy more and more about electronic voting. And as computer scientists, we both know more than anyone that's completely breakable. And if it's breakable in a catastrophic way. So you break a manual election, you lose a ballot, a whole room gets corrupted or something. There's this small mistake. Yeah. You make errors, they tend to be random and wipe each other out. But if you break a computer system, it's a systematic error. Yeah. You can actually change a whole electoral outcome. And it's easy to do it just trivially, let alone maliciously, just through stupidity. But the tension with elections is, on the one hand, you want after the election to be sure you've got the right result. So you want to know that everything's happened fairly and there's no mistake or corruption that's going on. So you'd like everything to be as open as possible so people can check it and verify it themselves and feel confident that the government elected is the right government and it wasn't fake. Because if you think about it, $1 billion is easily what is spent in the US on an election by one party. So it's worth that much money for someone to get in.
Right.
How hard would it be to, you pay someone $10,000, $20,000, you get a hacker to give you whatever election result you wanted, and people are prepared to spend billions of dollars.
Yeah.
So, and the potential rewards for winning elections are so huge. Or you think of countries that have corruption, and there's all these funny stories all around the world, but I'll tell you another day about how elections are currently corrupted everywhere. With electronic elections, it would just be a complete joke. You just have to give up. So the tension is, on the one hand, you want this complete openness, so that everything can be done openly, with subject to public scrutiny and checked. But on the other hand, you want complete secrecy and privacy.
Yeah.
Because I just wanted to pick some corrupt country, but I won't say any country, offending people. But you pick some country where you don't want to vote for the opposition, you don't want them to know, the government to know you voted for the wrong party. You want to keep or you could be coerced, or someone could say, like the famous mafia attack in Italy. The mafia controls a lot of Italian elections. They'll intimidate whole villages, break people's legs if they don't vote the right way. So Australia has this notion, we invented it, now the rest of the world uses it, called the secret ballot, which is no one can know how you vote. So you can see this tension. How can you have no one knowing how you voted,
and collecting,
and yet everyone be sure that it was all done right? And it's not no one except the sysadmin, or no one except Telstra. It's no one can know how you voted, because the sysadmin can be corrupted and Telstra can be corrupted and is or incompetent, or both. And so how do you do it so that no one in the world can know how you voted, yet everyone can be sure that your vote was counted correctly? It's this impossible seeming tension, yet one of my students did a brilliant job of actually coming up with a series of cryptographic protocols that meant at the end you could be utterly sure that everyone's vote was counted correctly, that there was no fraud at any point in the process, but yet you could never identify who voted.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's brilliant.
provably, mathematically. Yeah, it's absolutely brilliant. So that's one of my fields of research. And I'm also really interested in teaching, because that's my whole obsession now. So I'm always thinking about it. So I do education research as well. And both of those sorts of research are practical. My aim is to change how practice occurs around the world. I really am worried about elections and the way they're going. So I want to make sure that we have proper democratic elections all around the world, not just in Australia. And in teaching, I really want to challenge current teaching practice and lead to better teaching practice. Yeah.
Excellent. I think that should be enough.
Did you have any questions, Patrick?
No extra questions.
No. So you really haven't asked much about science. I thought you were going to ask more about science.
What's your favorite subject in maths?
My favourite subject in maths?
Massive field. Right there.
Of all the courses, subjects you've done now, it'd be probably combinatorics and probability and things like that. But of all mathematics, I love abstract mathematics. So groups, rings, fields, that sort of stuff, algebra. But even deeper, I love this branch of maths called category theory, which is so abstract that it makes groups look really concrete. And I love that completely. And I love paradoxes and contradictions, and I love logic, of course, as well. And I just love all maths, except I hate trigonometry. I can't stand trigonometry. So many things to remember. So boring. Yes.
Well, one other question for scientists. Do you have any really inspirational scientists or people that, like, I don't know, Isaac Newton, someone that you look up to? Or you
Certainly Richard Feynman. Brilliant physicist, absolutely. And a brilliant man and a brilliant thinker and a great example of how to be. I like Socrates. I think he was, I don't know, you'd call him a scientist, but for me he's a scientist in that he was a critical thinker who didn't accept things but always tried to challenge and disprove. Karl Popper, I really like, the theory of knowledge guy, who really made us challenge what knowledge science was all about. Great scientists. As you read about nearly every scientist, they're inspirational in so many ways, yet on the other hand, of course, they're weird and flawed in so many ways as well. So I wouldn't pick Newton or anyone like that, for example. But I like Turing, of course. I don't know if I'm allowed to include him as a scientist.
Sure.
Amazing man.
He's certainly a mathematician, which we classify as a scientist.
So, for me, Richard Feynman is the epitome of what it is to be a scientist. Oh, I like Einstein too. He's both a human and a thinker. I really like that about him.
Excellent. I hear the phone for you. So
Thank you.
We should
All right, thanks, John. Thanks, Patrick.